Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com.
Sometimes during Christmas, something magical happens.
Hey, Cricket customers. The Max with Ads plan is included with the Cricket $60 unlimited plan at no additional cost. And this holiday season, Max is the one to watch when you're feeling festive.
Son of a nutcracker!
Cozy up to all the holiday classics, like Elf, 8-Bit Christmas, and the Harry Potter 8-film collection. Just log in with your Cricket username and password to experience Max on all your favorite devices. Phone plan streams and standard definition programming subject to change. Fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See cricketwireless.com for details.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite football podcast, back for another week. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me, it's the birthday boy, Mr. Dean Jones. Happy birthday, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate, because I'm still alive. Every birthday is a celebration because I'm still alive. Yeah, it's good.
That's mournful of you.
Yep. So in the last section today, maybe this will become a theme. I'm going to do some life lessons from the guru. We'll go through some things, some of this wisdom that I've obviously built up for 113 years now.
Still behind the goal, though. That's the important thing
that I could pass down. So yeah, that's to look forward to in part 3. But yeah, very good. Got football boots from my kids as a present and a boot bag. Where it literally felt like I was 12 years old this morning.
Class,
but Dylan and Reese very excited to have gone to a sports shop and picked me out some boots and a boot bag, which I had a feeling I was getting boots because they kept telling me. But yeah,
out of the mouths of babes, right?
But yeah, all good, mate. Yeah, and obviously I'll have pizza later, won't I? So it'll be even better then.
Are you going to Pizza Express?
Of course I am.
Fantastic. I've got to say, I had a Pizza Express at the weekend. I had it delivered because they were doing an offer, and it was incredibly disappointing.
You can't get a pizza. Sad. You have to eat it in. You should never do that. Yeah. It's unacceptable. Pizza Express has to be. If you eat in, it will be exactly the same pizza every time you ever go. You won't. It won't make the standard won't drop. That's what's so good about it. But I've never done that. I've never done what you did because I'm scared of that level dropping, as you experienced.
Yeah, it was rubbish. It was rubbish.
Is it a football podcast or a pizza one? What are we doing today?
Maybe we're doing Pizza FC. What kind of boots did you get? I'm excited to find out.
They're like these Nike Mercurial ones. Yeah, I don't know the official name of them, to be honest. They're black and blue and white. They're really nice, actually. I've never. I don't think I've had boots like this before. I was talking to them on the Patreon the other day about how I once had those R9 ones. They're probably most similar to that, actually, in terms of the shape of them. But yeah, grew up on Adidas mainly. But I don't mind Nike at all. I think I had a pair of Tiempos. I did think they'd get me Nike Tiempos, but no, they didn't.
I'm a bit of an Adidas ultra, so I'm slightly disappointed.
I can't wait to have a kickabout, mate. They've literally bought me boots because I keep taking him down the pitches. We go for a kickabout. There's a great like AstroTurf 4G pitch, and yeah, Reece gets one goal, Dylan gets another goal, and we all mess around. But I haven't got any football boots anymore. Like I gave them away to my nephew, as you know. So now I've got some boots. I can properly stick Dylan in goal and proper
have a go at
him. Yeah.
Have a proper.
He thinks he's a good goalie, and he's not.
This is non-league Dean coming back out. I'm excited to see it in the flesh.
Smashing it at him.
Fantastic. All right, shall we start with things we love before we get into today's main ranking, which is going to be about transfer fixes for January and what's kind of needed by many clubs and maybe where they're going with it. But let's start with the standard, shall we?
Yeah, mate, I love that we've got to December before the first sacking has arrived in the Premier League. It's been great to see teams actually stick with people and see if they can get themselves out of the mess. Like, hopefully this is a trend that continues in years to come. But yeah, poor Paul Heckingbottom has become the first victim of the season.
Casualty.
He wins or he loses the sack race. I don't know what we're supposed to say there. Either way, he's out.
Either way, he's lost.
Either way, he's lost. He did not want this to happen. He's lost a lot. I think that's the problem. You can lose. You can get away somehow with losing 8-0 to Newcastle. You can definitely get away with losing 5-0 to Arsenal. You can't get away with losing 5-0 to Burnley.
The only team below you in the league.
Yeah, that's not going to help. So, yeah, let's see if they can perform a miracle under Chris Wilder to stay up. But on the back of this, mate, I think just a quick rank, really. Who's next to go? I don't think there's an obvious one. And I think we might be looking at very low numbers across the season to actually lose their jobs. I've set up a little list of candidates here, and I want you to pick out a 3 of who you think will go. You can add someone else if you want. I pitch to you Steve Cooper, Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
Roy Hodgson, Crystal Palace. Iraola at Bournemouth. Moyes at West Ham. And Eric Ten Hag, Man United, as 5 candidates for the chop. You can pick 3 of those, or you can add your own if you think I've missed something.
No, I think you're about spot on. I actually think that Steve Cooper might go if Fulham beat Nottingham Forest on Wednesday night. I think that the attitude has started to turn, and whilst I think he'll always be well regarded and loved by the Nottingham Forest fans, I do think there's an element now where we're looking at it and going, okay, this is 1 win in 10 for Forest, and weirdly that was a 2-0 win over Aston Villa, and you're now looking at it and being like, I don't quite know what you're up to. I'm not quite sure exactly how this is planning out. And look, Vangelos Marinakis is not the most sensible when it comes to things, and actually at the moment where everyone thought he would sack Cooper last year, he gave him a new contract. He's a bit of a wild card at the best of times, but I do think that there is this sense of frustration around what's going on at Forest. I think there was an expectation they would kick on this season. Whilst I don't think they'll go down, they basically have a free hit to embed someone in for some months and actually try to get them playing style of football that maybe does push them up to, or propel them up to where they want to be in the table. So I think Cooper probably tops this list. I don't think Iraola will go. I think that Bournemouth have started to turn things around and they look a lot better. It's taken longer than perhaps fans would have wanted, but they finally look like they have a real style and they are starting to play in a manner which befits an Iraola team. I think Moyes is an interesting one because West Ham are fine. Well, are they 9th? Imagine West Ham sacking a manager in 9th. I think they have 1 more point than the season that they actually ended up finishing in 7th, which qualified them for the Europa Conference League and started this incredible European run that they're on. But they are playing some dreadful football, and there is an element of, I think, frustration around the methods.
You got to be careful though, because this might be the best way to success for West Ham.
It might backfire. It might backfire. I think Palace will hang on to Hodgson until the end of the season.
Well, actually, if Steve Cooper did get sacked, I think that Hodgson would be in danger because Crystal Palace really like Steve Cooper,
yeah, they do.
and they would sniff an opportunity there. So that could actually be a knock-on effect. What about Ten Hag? Does he see out the season?
I don't know. I said on Monday that actually the thing that worries me most about Ten Hag now is that I'm not seeing any sort of stylistic nuance to what they're doing. And whilst you can point to Manchester United's injury list, I think you could also point to Tottenham Hotspur's injury list. You could point to Newcastle United's injury list. And you watch both of those teams play and they have a very clear style and they have a very clear idea of exactly what they're trying to do. And I actually think the most worrying thing for Ten Hag is that United's identity has been completely eroded, and I don't know what they're supposed to look like anymore. And that's about as low a bar as I can set. I don't know what type of team Manchester United want to be anymore. And actually, one of the great successes,
I think they want to be a good one, but they're not.
Yeah, well, but I don't know what type of style they want to implement. I think one of the successes of last season was that you look at the Carabao Cup and you think, great, and you see the FA Cup final, and that's a step forward, and they finish in the Champions League places. All of that, successful season for Ten Hag. But more than all of it, they implemented a style of play, which I was like, okay, I know what United are trying to do. That has completely disappeared. And whilst he will point to his injury list, I think that we saw Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham turn up to City with half a busload of injuries or suspensions that couldn't play, and playing the exact same style that Ange wants them to play every week, because he's drilling that into them on the training ground. And I think United's new owners might look at that and be like, I'm not seeing anything which suggests it. So obviously the ownership and the transfer of power to Jim Ratcliffe matters in this. But I think that he would be third on my list of those.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to depend how he does once Ratcliffe's through the door. Like, results are going to determine whether he sticks around or not. Then he's not keeping that job at all costs. There's no way that they'll just allow him to breeze through and continue as you are. But also at the same time, I don't like player power. I don't think Man United players deserve to have any say in whether Erik ten Hag stays or goes, because most of them are a complete letdown. It's probably, if you look back, you should have probably just axed half of them and like kept Mourinho instead or something. Like, they'd have probably done better sticking with a manager rather than this group of players.
Yeah, no, it's possible, isn't it? It's one of those. I saw a thing today, a meme on Twitter from Football Joe, I think it was, and it was the Toy Story meme. It was like United's players after about 7 months with the manager, and it was just that thing of, I don't want to play with you anymore. It really did make me laugh, but it's true in so many ways. We're seeing such a drop off from this player group, and look, I don't think Ten Hag's blameless in all of this, and I have my concerns about the way he's trying to set things up. But equally, he has to look at that performance at the weekend and be like, you're just not trying. And that's a very strange place to be. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But look, Man United, they have to continue for now and just see what comes out in the wash in the new year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. My quick thing I love is that Nico Williams signed a new contract at Athletic Club. There's a lot of talk about him leaving. There was a lot of talk about maybe Barcelona being involved, Liverpool being involved, Aston Villa were linked, Unai Emery trying to look him in. And he signed a new contract, which is great. And the picture that they put out of the two Williams brothers, which is a kind of make of an old picture of the two of them with Iñaki kissing Nico's head, was really lovely. And then both of them scored at the weekend. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to see. Now, there is a release clause. I think it's around 42 million. And, someone might activate that because Nico Williams is brilliant. But it was just a sense of, there was a lot of chat around this. There was a lot of chat from Nico. He was like, I've got to decide what's best for my future. And it really did look like he was going to let this contract run down and move on. And then suddenly out of the blue, it's like, bang, new contract. I was delighted, absolutely delighted with this. It really made me smile back at the end of last week. And I wanted to just give it some credence, because there is so much about modern football that you look at players, kissing the badge and then moving away. And Athletic bucked that trend so much. And then suddenly it was like, oh, the young star boy might just walk away from this. And that's really uncomfortable, especially when Athletic's model revolves around selling players when they do sell them for high prices, release clause fees, and then reinvesting that into the academy. For him to walk away, I think would have been a massive body blow to Athletic. So if him signing a new contract is great news, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my hunch was always that he would stay, just especially as his brother was there. And it was always difficult for players to leave Athletic, as we learned about the identity when we were out there. But obviously, it's hard to turn down. Say Unai Emery is knocking at your door, and you see what they're starting to
achieve.
Another
Basque man, of course.
Yeah, and that's a tricky one to turn down. I think there are others that have been mooted that are easier to turn down for him, because he's definitely going to want to be part of a philosophy and a culture. But I'm glad he's staying. Absolutely.
Delighted. Right, so after the break, we are going to be talking about January and the transfer fixes that clubs need. Don't go anywhere.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code PLAY100. That's code PLAY100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code PLAY100. That's code PLAY100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Welcome back to Ranks FC. It's time for our main ranking, and it's over to the birthday boy to lead today's ranking. We're into December, less than a month now until the January transfer window opens, Dean. And you're taking a look at some Premier League clubs who need fixes in their team and potentially the likely options they are going to turn to once that window does open.
Yeah, I mean, every team as a fan base would feel like they need things in January, and they probably all do need something. But I think the best way to turn this is to try and merge those teams in need, but also with the likelihood of them actually making signings that potentially transform their season or give them what they actually need. Before we head into the list of 5, just a few mentions along the way. I'm not going to go into Man United details because I think there's still quite a bit that can change around that picture before we even get to January. United will sign someone, but I don't yet know the conditions that are going to sit around that or even what is going to be possible. So we're going to leave Man United on the back burner for now, even though I do think they'll try to do something, and is probably, a forward will be likely because they can't score goals. And their big fix across the year will be the defence, particularly in the centre of their defence. But I think that'll be difficult to do in Jan. And I think if you look across their targets, all of them would be better targeted in the summer. So, whether that's Todibo or Antonio Silva, whoever it is, Branthwaite, Everton, I feel that they're all more attainable in the summer than Jan. So let's see. We'll see when Ratcliffe is through the door and actually getting his feet under the table as to what he's actually got the capability to do. But I don't want to go with them as in the top 5. And same with Chelsea, who are always capable of doing something. Clearly might sign a striker, might sign a goalkeeper. Big problems when you don't trust your number 9 or your goalkeeper, as we talked about before. So that's always plausible that a club who has spent £1 billion already could go and do that. And then there are teams like, say, Crystal Palace, who are very, very thin right now and need to pad out their squad. But don't really want to be flexing any financial muscle in this market and just kind of want to get through the season. It's a bit of a sad state of affairs at Crystal Palace, as it is at a few other clubs this season.
I think there's a lot of clubs in that kind of bracket, right, where they're
not going to go down.
Not going to go down, so therefore they have that capacity to wait till the summer and try and work in a slightly more open market. And we know January is a tough market to work in. We know that people overpay often in January because they need quick fixes. And actually, Palace don't have that crying need, despite the fact that, they could obviously kick on and they could obviously do with some padding, as you say. But they're probably safe as houses. And therefore, there's no real point delving into the January market too deep.
No, unless they do bring in a new manager. If Steve Cooper did lose his job at Forest, if Palace did appoint him at the start of January, and then they were looking at a new vision for the club, they would rather save back the money and invest it in the summer under a new manager, and at the time when they're also investing in the stadium, than they would give anything to Roy Hodgson right now, who's just kind of helping them see through a phase quite safely. So Palace will go into the market as it stands for 2 loan players, basically, one in midfield to replace Doucouré, and then an attacking option as well. So they were worth a mention, I think. But let's jump into the top 5 and look at number 5, which is Arsenal. Now, we don't know for sure yet that they're going to do this, but there is definitely possibilities around Arsenal actually signing a striker that helps them win the league. I mean, they're in such a good position here that it must be so tempting, and it'll be a missed opportunity if they don't actually put up a proper fight for the title from here.
Well, it's obviously 20 years since they've won the league. It's a golden opportunity in many ways,
and it's come as a surprise.
Maybe
it's come as a real surprise, mate. There's no way, if you'd have looked at this 18 months ago, that you'd have said that Arsenal would be this well primed 14 games into the 23-24 season, and they are top of the Premier League. They've got a 2-point cushion over Liverpool and a 3-point cushion on Manchester City. It's a very, very strong spot they've got themselves into. They're not overpowering teams with like 3, 4, 5 goals each week, but they've grown from last season. You're just wondering, where's the reliable source of goals? There's talk today actually of them being open to offers for Eddie Nketiah. There's obviously been constant talk about whether Gabby Jesus is reliable enough in front of goal to get you over the line in moments like this, despite the fact he's a very, very good centre forward.
It's also not just in terms of his goals, but his availability. He is injury prone, and that's just something that you have to accept with him, because yes, he's incredible, and you have to appreciate what he does for the side. But equally, if he's not available for 10 of the 20 games in the run-in, then that's a worry for Arsenal, especially if it should be a busy schedule with them now booked into the Champions League knockouts. You'd imagine they'll be looking at bringing silverware home in both the cups as well. This is an opportunity for Arsenal to go, we're going to just put something in the cabinet and make sure that we're in the conversation. But also, they will look at this Premier League as an opportunity. They'll also know that City will probably go on an absolutely ridiculous streak in the new year, and they'll have to contend with that if they are going to go and try and win the title.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, you look at their top goal scorers so far, you've got Saka on 8, Odegaard on 7, Trossard on 6, and then you've got Gabby Jesus and Nketiah on 5 apiece. They share the goals around, and it's worked so far, but we tend to think these days, based on what Man City have ended up doing, that you do need to go down the road of just having a guy that eats up most of your goals. And we also know that Mikel Arteta tends to kind of copy whatever Pep Guardiola sets out as the pattern of football to come. So that's why my instinct comes from that Arsenal do have a genuine instinct and a temptation to go into the market. But as I say, they're not committed to doing this yet. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out as a genuine candidate to sign, because at the moment, as we look at it, 2 names that get talked about probably the most are Ivan Toney and Victor Osimhen. Victor Osimhen I see as a deal you won't be able to do in January, and I certainly don't see Arsenal spending in excess of £100 million to go and sign a centre forward.
Yeah, De Laurentiis is hardly going to let him go on the cheap.
No, exactly that. And Ivan Toney, I've said this for a while, and I've believed this to be the case. Brentford aren't going to have gone through all this period with Ivan Toney suspended and then getting him back into training and helping him recondition and get into January as available again and then just sell him. I've found that so hard to believe, unless they get a ridiculous offer in, which I'm told that Brentford want as much as £80 million for Ivan Toney. I've seen people mention him 50 million. I don't believe they're going to let him go for anything like that. And I think that Arsenal initially thought, back at the start of this calendar year, say March, April time, when they first started thinking about the idea of signing Toney, that when we got to the end of his ban, when that all kind of was set in stone, that £50 million might be a reasonable target for them to hit if they wanted to sign him. And it's just not going to be the case. So is Ivan Toney going to leave? And if so, are Arsenal going to pay 70, 80 million pounds? Not sure they are. Benjamin Sesko was linked last week to Arsenal. Again, I find it difficult to believe that he will leave in the January market. So I think if Arsenal do end up signing a striker, it might end up being somebody that's not actually really been mentioned so far to this point. So I think we have to stay open-minded about this one. I've stuck it in the top 5 because I feel that it's a definite need. I think it's a need. I don't think Nketiah is okay to have as your 9 at this point. I think you need to be stronger than that. I think you do move him on, and then you open up a spot in the squad to have a better option available to you if you want to go head-to-head with Liverpool's forwards and with Erling Haaland and his backup crew. So that would be my hunch on what happens with Arsenal.
So a couple of things. One, if Arsenal do sell Eddie Nketiah in January, are they going to look back and be like, we made the wrong call when we sold Flo Balogun in the summer? Because
I don't think he's good enough either.
Okay, all right. I mean,
I think that's probably what it comes down to.
Balogun is a more well-rounded forward than Nketiah. And maybe it's not necessarily just about, yes, okay, as we're talking about, goal scoring is key, but also it's about fitting into this Arsenal system and bringing others into play. And look, I love Balogun. I've got a real thing about how good he is. And he's been pretty sharp for Monaco. His record's pretty good. And I'm not saying also that he is the answer to Arsenal's prayers in this exact scenario. But do you think there'll be an element of like, oh, we might have sold the wrong guy?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's a really unexpected situation, I still think, for Arsenal to have got this far so fast. And I think that we have to consider that. And Balogun, 22 years old. I mean, you look at his record in Liga this season, he's got 4 goals in 11 games. So you can't really say that if he would have stayed at Arsenal, he'd have significantly impacted. If you were looking at a record here of 8 or 9 goals in 11 games, then maybe, yeah. But I think when you look back at that, you're like, well, would he have got, Nketiah's got more goals than him in a harder league. So I don't think that there's probably too much between them. Ultimately, I don't think either of them are good enough if Arsenal are going to win the league.
Okay. And the other question I would probably ask is, you talk about Ivan Toney and what that might cost. Brentford's record sale is £28 million for Ollie Watkins to Aston Villa. Are they going to, you're saying 50 million wouldn't be enough, and I tend to agree with you. But how much more than that is it? Because surely if Brentford double their record sale, they're in conversations about, we've done another one where we've turned a player around, bought him for, a relatively low fee and turned him on for a massive, massive profit. And Brentford are, for all intents and purposes, a club that reinvest really cleverly, who look to different markets. Yes, they've started spending a little bit more recently in terms of matching up to their Premier League incomes and their status as a solid Premier League club now. But, they have, when these offers come in, Brentford have tended to accept sort of market-ready offers for players. And that's what maybe tweaks my interest about Ivan Toney, because I think if you put £55 million on the table for him, I think Brentford would look at it and be like, how could we reinvest £55 million? Probably incredibly well. And they know that they have the ability to actually reinvest that properly in a way that maybe some other clubs who take record signs, take Fulham, who take these big fees for players and then look at it and go, oh, we're just going to, splash this in potentially silly ways. Brentford aren't like that. Brentford do tend to make the right decisions in these markets. And I think that if you put that kind of money on the table, they might look at it as a massive opportunity.
Maybe. I mean, Ollie Watkins, I think they feel in hindsight they let go for a fee that was too low. But at the time, Ollie Watkins had never played a Premier League match. And so, I think that would have been Aston Villa's argument at the time. They couldn't guarantee that he was going to be a hit in the Prem, and to get almost £30 million for a Championship striker is pretty good business. Ivan Toney's came into the Prem with Brentford and has a good regular goal scoring record. He's shown that no matter who he's playing against, he can do the business. And I think that Premier League pedigree that he's now built up puts him into a different level of the market than you were probably looking at before. Plus the fact, he's English and he's knocking on the door of the England squad, and he will be doing that again once he's back and in form. And I think also the market has moved on since Ollie Watkins made that transfer, and you now see the premiums that are being added to players. And it's also dependent on who's making these offers for your players. I mean, if you consider what clubs are looking at Ivan Toney right now, Chelsea and Arsenal. Well, Chelsea, you've seen the sort of money they've been spending on like central midfielders of over £100 million. So if you've got a game-changing centre forward, you're going to be like, why would I let this guy go at half the value of that when he could change your season? So I think that's probably where it ultimately comes from. And Brentford have no real intent to sell him unless it's really good money. Brentford 11th in the league without Ivan Toney, and probably believing they could get as high as like 7th or 8th if he was to come in and actually hit the ground running and get them over the line in a few games that they haven't so far. So that will be part of that plan. I'll move on to number 4. Liverpool have been hit by another injury, Joel Matip facing a layoff. And I think that this brings under the microscope the need for, another centre-back. But I think it's deeper than just another centre-back. I mean, we already know that they have problems at right-back in terms of, Trent kind of plays right-back, but he's never really there. And that teams keep exploiting the spaces. So you've got this centre-back, right-back conundrum, but you've also kind of got a number 6 conundrum as well at Liverpool, where Alexis McAllister obviously has been used there quite a bit this season, and it's getting better. There's definitely a period of transition going on for him and a period of learning, and that makes sense because Liverpool have basically a new midfield and they're all still coming together. They've done it pretty well. I mean, they're second in the Premier League. They've got unbelievable home record so far this season. But this Matip injury is probably going to bring new expectations from the Liverpool fan base that perhaps they go into the market to try and sign a centre-back. I mean, it's not going to be easy to go and do that at the very top level. I mean, the name that's probably hanging around most since the back of last summer is Gonzalo Inacio at Sporting, who Liverpool have had on their radar for a while, and so have Man United. He's not cheap. Like, this guy is going to be...
he shouldn't be either. Like, there'll be no reason for Sporting to sell him on the cheap.
Absolutely not. But the age that he's at, the profile of him, the league he's coming from, all makes sense in terms of like how Liverpool would want to step up their build. It's just, can they do it in January? Like, I hadn't really been expectant of it, but now that there's this injury to Matip, it does make me wonder if they're brave enough to go and do this. You think back to when Liverpool last were able to put themselves into title contention. You're obviously going back a few years now, but they took that jump to spend extra money that had been set out for future windows by going out and signing Van Dijk and bringing in Alisson and kind of just making this push that was able to elevate their position and get into a situation where they could challenge for the title quicker than otherwise might have happened. And I think at a time when Man City is showing vulnerabilities and there's potential for this season that City don't win the league, Liverpool have to consider themselves favourites to make the most of that opportunity because they've got the more recent experience than Arsenal of actually going on to win this league. So really interesting to see whether they do exploit this moment. But yeah, number 4, I think if you're looking for a transfer fix and you're Liverpool right now, there's this whole area of the pitch. It's the 6 back into the centre backs, right back, and you're just like, how can they just like slightly level up here to make sure that they're ready for the second half of the season?
Benjamin Pavard, probably.
I thought you said Benjamin Button there, and you were talking to me about my birthday.
No, I mean you are to be fair, Benjamin Button. You get younger every year. We go on here. I thought it was interesting reading Klopp's comments the other day about Jarrell Quansah, where he was like, "Oh, it couldn't be better news for the club." To be honest, I think before this season, a lot of people told us we should buy a new centre half. We knew we had Quansah. Did we know he'd show up like this? No, not exactly. We were pretty hopeful, so the future is bright. It's cool, which I thought was one very nice, and I enjoyed watching it. But more than that, I think you kind of look at it, and there is that ability to trust in players coming through. Obviously, we've seen Klopp do this before with various players, notably Trent, who established himself in the first team and became Liverpool's first choice right back at a very young age. Now, I'm not sure that this is exactly the same situation, but there is a feeling around Liverpool that Quansah is firmly one for the future. That any sort of loan interest seems to have been rebuffed. Part of that will be the injuries, of course, but also part of it is that they seem to have genuine hope that he will become a first-team mainstay in the years to come.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's definitely worth pointing out. It's just a case of, he's done. Can you trust that? Can you trust that for when the going gets really tough? Do you want to end up in a situation like Arsenal? Probably this is a bit harsh, but if you think of Arsenal when Rob Holding was having to mark Erling Haaland to stay in the Premier League title race. You don't want to be getting caught out like that. I'm not saying he's Rob Holding like, but is he going to have the nous to deal with moments like that? I think that's the problem. And that's what you have to really weigh up as to whether you spend money in this market. It's not an easy time to spend money. I honestly don't think there are going to be many teams in the Premier League that go and make big signings in this January window. There won't be. A lot of the business that we see will be loans. But Liverpool are one of the few that I think could surprise us by making a significant signing.
Yeah, okay. All right, it'll be an interesting one. Obviously, they might do their business before the January transfer window opens, as they did with Virgil van Dijk, announced on Boxing Day, wasn't it, with a Christmas tree?
They like it, don't they?
All sorts of things going on. All right,
and we always say,
well,
Liverpool do surprise us as well. Obviously, they've done that a few times. Endo being the last one when he came in to replace Hendo. So maybe we should just be looking.
As Lil Wayne once said, real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Can you think of anyone that rhymes with Matip? Because maybe that is the route that they're going down. Maybe I should look into that for my next.
I'll have a think about it. Yeah.
Okay, so number 3 is Fulham. Fulham. I mean, all the other clubs here are pretty big. Fulham,
and then there's us.
Aren't, but I feel it's significant. I mean, enough people that listen to this podcast seem to have been taking Fulham into their hearts as their second team since they've been listening to us. And I feel like it's a big enough talking point given the positions and the things that we're talking about here, because Fulham didn't sign a replacement for Alexander Mitrovic, apart from Raul Jimenez, who can't score a goal. And Joao Palhinha, he has scored one goal. But I'm still going to say he can't score goals. And, Joao Palhinha is going to leave Fulham, whether that's January or the summer. Can't be sure. I still think it's likely to be the summer. But either way, they're going to need to bring somebody in, and it looks like they're being primed to bring Andre in from Fluminense. But I'm always a little bit anxious about that because he's going to be playing in the Club World Cup soon, and I can't help but feel that that's a massive shop window that still remains open for us to be hijacked. So that does scare me a little bit. But it's the striker. Like Fulham, they tried to play in the same manner. They've tried to use people in the same Mitrovic way, whether it's Carlos Vinicius or whether it's Muniz. To some extent, Raul Jimenez can do some of the movements and the link-up play, but definitely not the rest of it. And there's just a gaping hole there for Fulham to transform their season. Again, like Crystal Palace earlier, it won't get bad enough probably for them to go down. And that's why there's no certainty from me that they go and make a splash in the market. But they need to. For my sake, for your sake, for the club's sake, Fulham needs to go and sign a striker.
For my sanity.
Honestly,
Very
the amount
important.
of chances that go begging in this football team because they don't have a goal scorer is ridiculous. And this is a team that just went and scored 3 goals at Anfield at the weekend. So imagine if we had a goal scorer. So, like, where do they go? I mean, you've got Girassi, who's being touted around the Premier League at the moment, but he's being touted to bigger clubs than Fulham now. I mean, Fulham, when I first linked him 6 weeks, 2 months ago, seemed reasonable, but at the moment, he's been linked to Newcastle and Man United, so that's not great. And definitely, there's potential there, and he's not expensive. He's going to be about £15 million if he does leave Stuttgart. But beyond that, you got like Santiago Jimenez, who's pretty expensive, and again being chased by big clubs. And anyone that Fulham starts to look at, even Armando Broja, who gets linked to Fulham, I'm just not convinced he leaves. I'm not convinced he leaves and makes a jump. I actually don't think that would be a bad signing, to be honest with you. I think something like that would be quite fitting for Fulham. But they need something to happen because otherwise the season's just going to fizzle out and they'll end the season in probably 16th, 15th, and it'll just be as flat as it pretty much has been for the last couple of months. And the fact that the place has started to be, a little bit of new life in it recently, especially after the weekend, I want to see something happen here. Say, like, Palhinha, fine, he'll probably leave, but to be in a situation where you lose Mitrovic and Palhinha and not replace that quality, it's just not acceptable. Like, you have to at least give it a go. And we'll see, because this really is a transfer fix that has to be made.
Yeah, I mean, the one that intrigues me, I think, the most is Jonas Wind at Wolfsburg, which has been touted a little bit by the German press recently. And that as a profile works for me. That's the kind of transfer I would like to see Fulham make. And when you start to examine the options, and look, obviously, Girassi is having a wonderful season. I still think he's in a hot hand streak. I think he's in a bit of a purple patch. And I'm not sure that his output remains this good. Now, a drop-off from this is not the end of the world because you'd still be scoring at an impressive rate. But I'm a bit wary that his entire profile is being inflated at the moment by the fact that he's had an incredible start to this season. That obviously, naturally. But Jonas Wind, who's obviously been at Wolfsburg for, 2 years? It'll be 2 years in January, I think. Feels like the kind of profile Fulham should be after. And that makes sense. I like Broja a lot as well. And I think that would be a really fitting and strong move. Also, very funny if Fulham replaced a Serbian with an Albanian. But if you actually look at players that are linked and Fulham could get for potentially a reasonable fee, Vind is the one that I'm looking at going, yeah, that makes probably the most sense.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, I think, all the attributes are there, like you say. So keep your eyes on it because that is a transfer fix that is absolutely necessary. As I say, at a time when I don't expect a lot of money to be spent or significant moves to be made, Fulham are a team that absolutely should be doing that. And if they brought in someone like Vind and Andre, then that does fix something that's definitely going to be a problem over the course of 2024.
Yeah.
Let's go into the top two because there's two teams here that are kind of going head to head to see who we're going to have as the biggest club in terms of shopping in the January window. It was tough to know who to go for at 1 and who to go for at 2. I think I'm still not entirely sure which way I've gone. I don't think it ultimately will matter too much. But at 2, I'm going to go for Tottenham, who, look, they've done brilliantly. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever seen a transformation as significant as this for a long time in the Premier League. Like the way that they have started playing under Ange Postecoglou so quickly, and they so believe in what he's doing and continue to do it week in, week out, then it's marvellous what he's done. And I've been so surprised by it. You warned me that this would happen. I did not believe that Ange Postecoglou could come into the Premier League, play this way, win everybody over in the space of a matter of months. And he actually did it in a matter of weeks. He's been absolutely eye-opening as to what is possible in the Premier League if you get the right man as your boss. But they've obviously been decimated by injury and suspension. It's derailed them in terms of where they were in the league after 10 games, and now they're now catching up a little bit, and they've got to kind of refocus and figure out what they can do. But I was speaking to someone this morning, and I said, "What do you expect?" And he said, like, 3 signings is like absolutely necessary. You're now looking at a situation where Tottenham they're already going to prioritise a centre back. That's absolutely necessary. They need a centre back.
Yeah.
They need a midfielder now too. Bentancur out as a result of that Matty Cash challenge. He's going to be out, and in January, you've got a situation where a couple of the players are going to be off at the African Cup of Nations, and it leaves you short in that spot for a while. And then look, you've still got players to call upon.
Like Skip.
Well, this is the thing. You could Skip, and you got Højbjerg, and Lo Celso did well when he came in the other day. But if Tottenham really want to build on the momentum of the first few months under Ange, and if they want to back the manager and show that actually we've got a fantastic chance here to make the top 4 or 5, we can't let it go. They've got to go and make a statement. So that means going and sign a centre-back, going and sign a central midfielder, and also going to sign another attacker. So look, it could be that in midfield, maybe they get involved in that Calvin Phillips discussion. Like, Calvin Phillips going to be leaving Manchester City. He's looking for regular first-team football. I'm told he'd rather stay in the Premier League than go and try himself, say, at Juventus. Not that Juventus is a bad option. It's obviously not. It's a chance of a lifetime. But his whole point is getting ready for the Euros and making sure he's in that picture. It's a lot easier for him to go and join another Premier League team and fit into that than it is to go and test himself.
We know how that works, right? Where you're in the Premier League and you're in Southgate's plans, and you're not, unless you're literally Jude Bellingham, and you're not. Like we've had the Tomori discussion before. We've talked about various players playing across Europe, and we know that they're being ignored. There's no coincidence that the moment Sancho signed for Man United, never mind started playing for them, he was suddenly back in Southgate's plans. Nothing here is difficult.
No, exactly that. So
it doesn't make it right for what it's worth. It just is the way it is.
It's just the way it is. I mean, look, Southgate loves him, and he's worked with him enough times that he's probably going to pick him, even if he goes and joins Walton and Ersham for 4 months. But he's ultimately for himself, he needs to be in that pattern of playing regular top level football, being part of a team. Look, the concern would be if he went to Tottenham instead of Newcastle, that he could get dislodged from that team quicker, because Newcastle are going to be without Sandro Tonali for a longer period, and Tottenham are going to be missing their other midfielders. But also, he should believe in himself and back himself that he could keep players out of the team if he went in there and did well. And then, obviously, in terms of attackers, you've got Jota at Al Ittihad, who hasn't settled into Saudi Arabian life and is going to be available for a transfer, worked under Ange before. Tottenham looking at data when they're trying to sign players and make sure that they fit with what it takes to fit into the team. We already know that Jota's done that before under him and will completely understand it. So the transition to doing that would be easier. Samuel Illing Jr. of Juventus also being linked.
12 million, apparently. That seems like a steal.
Yeah, actually, someone literally just messaged me about this, and he's a Juve contact. And I just checked with him. I said, what is his value? And he said, 15 to 20 million euros minimum. No, million. It doesn't even say minimum. It just says 15 to 20 million euros. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a bad deal. I mean, this is a player who's come through the English system, obviously moved abroad at a young age to go and test himself and push himself, and has now got,
I know this is great point, but this is mental from Juventus. Like, absolutely, like madness. Like, why they think this is the right idea, I have no idea. But even if he's not in Allegri's plans for the next 6 months, Juve should be looking at the next phase of their development and looking at Eiling Jr. as someone who can step up and be like, a key figure for them. And I think, look, you're seeing someone like Jamie Bino-Gittins emerge at Dortmund. How Juventus have looked at Eiling Jr.'s performances this season and gone, we could do without him. I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever.
What makes me laugh as well is they're like one of the teams heavily linked to signing Jadon Sancho. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to take a chance on him right now? Why?
That feels very commercial led.
Not sure if that's a good commercial decision either, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. So very interesting. I mean, Tottenham just in this position whereby they can't afford to lose any of the progress that they've made so far under Ange. And if they can just add a little bit more depth to that squad, they'll make sure that they are very well positioned to be challenging at the end of the season for a top 5 finish. And at number one,
just on Jota, sorry, before you move on.
Yeah, go on.
There is a thing I'm a little bit concerned about, in that I think Jota is a lovely player. I've loved him for a long time, and long-term listeners to this show will remember that Sam and I were banging on about Jota V3 back in the Bleacher Report days. We were very, very hot on how good this kid was. I'm a little bit wary that moving, and obviously he'll be under Ange, so I think he'll be fine. But I actually think that he might need a stepping stone before he reaches a Champions League club in the Premier League. I think he might need a mid-table team where he goes and sets the place on fire. He was someone I heavily linked in terms of Fulham should be looking at this bloke in the summer before he moved to Saudi Arabia. And then when the links came out that he wasn't happy and he was looking for a return to Western Europe, it was another one I was like, yep, okay, that makes sense. There is a little bit of a danger with someone like Tottenham that there will be an expectation that he will deliver very, very regularly. And whilst I am an absolute firm believer in his talent, he does seem like someone who's a little bit easily rattled. And I think this Saudi Arabia spell probably speaks to that maybe he just needs somewhere where he's going to guarantee a start, week in, week out, in order to get himself settled back in European football after this spell out.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, he's found that move hard, and I think that maybe it comes in to some comfort for him to recognise the sort of manager he'd be playing under and know that he would fit and know that he could adjust. But yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Is he ready for a team that's knocking on the door again of being part of that Champions League conversation in the Premier League, or does he need to be in the level behind that? He'll back himself, I'm sure, to be in the top level. But of course, there are reasons to have reservations around it. Number one is the team currently positioned one spot below Tottenham in the league. Tottenham are 5th and Newcastle United are 6th. But yeah, they're obviously going to do business and they've got to be a little bit careful with it, is the only problem. I mean, we're probably looking at 3 for Newcastle as well. Now, the midfielder, we just talked there about Calvin Phillips. As it stands right now, Newcastle have obviously been in touch with reps around this, and there is a feeling that Calvin Phillips comfortable with the idea of moving to Newcastle and going in there, and obviously there's a spot for him in that midfield. So if it's not him, it will be somebody like him, and that will happen. They will sign a midfielder. It's going to be on loan. Like, Newcastle don't have the freedom in the January market to go out spending money. They are having to be very cautious of their financial fair play position. And that includes even cheap deals, because they have to be careful about when they are spending cash. So, yes, they do want a forward. And yes, they have been offered Girassi of Stuttgart. But even at £15 million, I'm led to believe that is all up. It's all in one hit. And so that could... Look, I'm not an expert on Newcastle's finances. I'm giving you secondhand information that I've been told by somebody else. That could put them in danger of touching an area of financial fair play that they don't want to get close to, because they know that they're under such scrutiny now because of their ownership and because of the way they're going about this build. So they're going to be cautious around that. Now, of course, on top of that, their goalkeeper's now injured. Nick Pope going to be out. Dubravka will be given a chance between the sticks at Newcastle, but there's no avoiding the fact that they're going to have their eyes open to opportunities in the market. Aaron Ramsdale is going to be unlikely. Why would Arsenal loan Aaron Ramsdale to Newcastle and help them out? They shouldn't.
If there was an obligation?
And I doubt they will. If there was the potential for, Ramsdale to make that move long term, and if Ramsdale was like absolutely adamant that this is what he wanted to do, and Arsenal were to definitely bank, I don't know, 40, 50 million pound in the summer, then fine. Potentially that could be done, but it's been played down quite heavily to me in the last 24 hours or so that could happen. David De Gea is a name that's being mooted as an option, obviously a free agent at the moment, big wages, but There is potential around it because of he's unattached. Ruben Neves is a player obviously owned by PIF, who own Newcastle already, and this controversial loan idea.
That seems to be being played down as well.
But there aren't many teams that could actually afford to take Ruben Neves. He's on such big money in terms of wages, but Newcastle could deal with it. They could find ways around that. So
easy enough if you're owned by the same people, I assume.
Exactly. There's ways around that which helps them. And so that's...
Oh, we're going to pay 0% of his wages. They've loaned him to Newcastle.
Well, they have to be seen to be paying something. Yeah, they have to be seen to pay something, I think. But yeah, so you've got the midfield position. I've talked about Girassi and the potential possibly of going there, because they do foresee that there might be problems going forward again with Isak and Wilson staying fit. There's also potential at centre-back, because obviously like Botman being out is a massive blow to them. We've seen that Newcastle, actually, players that have been filling in so far this season have done brilliantly, whether that was Lascelles, whether that's Livramento.
Lascelles has had a real comeback. I think a couple of years back, he was bottom of our Premier League captains list. I think Southampton 20th. And at the time, so reasonable. He couldn't get anywhere near the Newcastle team. But you know what? His renaissance has been remarkable. So I just want to give some flowers to Jamal Lascelles. He has been exceptional in the last few games when he's been called upon.
When they do finally lift the Premier League trophy, it will be Jamal Lascelles who's the captain.
He might be 51, but he'll still be there.
But yeah, I mean, they're linked to the likes of Ben Godfrey, for example, is somebody at Everton who's going to be made available, and they're being linked with him.
That's
so are Tottenham,
strange.
actually.
That's very strange that he just can't get a look in at Everton. And look, Branthwaite's been brilliant, but the fact that Ben Godfrey is just sort of chilling there after all of the hype, and also after being one of Everton's best performers, over the last few seasons, not, in exactly recent memory, but there were definitely seems to be like, oh, Ben Godfrey is bailing Everton out time and time again here. The fact that he is just absolutely off the menu for Sean Dyche is wild.
I think he's one of the best players to look out for in the January market, to be honest with you, to see where Ben Godfrey lands. I mean, all the information we're getting is that he will be available, and that, the likes of Newcastle and Tottenham very much interested.
The fact that Everton are obviously, points deduction aside, scrapping for survival at the bottom of the Premier League, and they have a player there who's been looked at by teams scrapping for Champions League places who can't get into the Everton team.
Yeah. Absolutely that, yeah. And on top of all this as well, they're considering, in terms of the forward position, because they are going to be careful, and I think, loans again is going to be the most likely option that Newcastle go. But they obviously have Minte, who is on loan at Feyenoord, and they are considering ways to bring him back into the fold. So that is one to look out for as well from a Newcastle perspective. So there you go. Yeah, Newcastle and Tottenham, hard to split them at the top. And then Fulham, Liverpool and Arsenal, all as clubs with the potential to do some season-defining business. And then Man United and Chelsea. Who knows? Who knows, mate? Who knows?
Very much is that, isn't it? Obviously, so much revolving around what those clubs look like in a month's time. Feels like they're far more spur of the moment than the rest of these decisions, and that's maybe the wildest thing of the lot. Right, okay, we will leave it there for our main segment. Thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones. After the break, Dean is going to be giving us some birthday life lessons in a sort of gibberish. Stick with us. Welcome back to Ranks FC. It's time for part 3, and it's a very special part 3 because obviously it's Dean's birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. There you go.
I always forget that you're quite a good singer.
Yeah, people do sometimes forget that,
Yeah. Most people are completely out of tune on that, but you're bang on, mate. Well done. It's certainly better than listening to the gibberish alarm, so I appreciate that.
An excuse not to do the gibberish alarm. What have you got for us, Benjamin Button?
Oh, mate, yeah, some guru wisdom to end the podcast today. I mean, I don't know if we've got any listeners in their 40s, so I thought, actually, I'm very well positioned here on top of the mountain to actually give you all some words that can guide you through life.
I'm listening, man. I'm listening.
I'm getting ready. I'm leveled up here, and you lot need to take heed. Listen, I think at 3, one of the things I've learned in recent times is that worrying is pointless. utterly, utterly pointless. And so many people spend so much of their time, I think, even if it's not your current generation, you look at the people around you, your peers, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, whatever it is, you'll know people that are just like worriers. And it's your brain tricking you, forcing you to think about a worst case scenario that is probably never going to happen. Think of a time when you were laying awake in the middle of the night and you were just like, couldn't get something off your brain and you're trying to come up with solutions at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then the next day you wake up, you better give it a second thought and everything just works out for the best. Like most of the stuff that we worry about does not happen. Occasionally it probably does. But look, if you can't solve that problem right now, then you don't do anything. If you can solve it, then go and do it straight away. If it's a pretty easy way to fix it, if you've got a parking ticket and you're worried about it, well, the best thing you can do is just figure out a way to get that money and just pay it, because you're not going to get out of that. So go and figure that out. But if you can't fix something that you're constantly worried about, if it's out of your control, then just don't do anything. Just wait to see what happens, because it's going to make you twice as miserable just waiting, figuring out something. And even if you do lay there stressing about it and the worst solution does come around, probably that hour or two you spent in the middle of the night ain't going to help you. So there you go. You can go and tell your mums and dads that next time that they tell you how worried they are.
I'm not worrying anymore. I'm not worried about anything.
We're not worried anymore. We're not worried.
There we go.
I'll probably lay awake worrying about something tonight, and I have to play this back.
I'm going to lay awake worrying about how I've edited this podcast. Never mind anything else.
Just make sure it's out there, mate, and we'll be all right. At number 2, so many people are just like, at the moment, it's cost of living crisis and all the rest of it. And everyone's so worried about money and putting money aside. And I hear people talking about pensions and bills and savings. And I'm like, don't worry about any of it. What's the point? Like, you get one life, right?
It's an extension. Don't worry about this stuff either.
It's an extension of it, because you get one life. And like, you hear, like, I've actually seen this on TikTok a few times actually recently, where people go out in the street and they speak to people that are in like their 70s or something. And they're all just like talking about, just make sure you're like around the people that you love. Just make sure you have experiences that you're never going to let go of. And like, don't spend like hours and hours and hours at work doing a job that you can easily be let go of at any moment. Don't spend like your whole life like shuffling money into a pension fund. Like, look, by all means, I'm not saying don't ever get a pension and set yourself up for the future, but don't put so much aside that you can't enjoy the current moment. Like, make sure if you can get the opportunity to travel, that you go and travel, that you get experiences that you want to do. Like, when I'm doing this podcast in 40 years' time and I'm absolutely skint and I'm like, can we have some sort of like buy Dean a coffee because he's got no money? At least I'll have experiences. I'll be like, yeah, but at least there was that one point where I went to Athletic Club with Jack and Sam, and that can get me through. Or we went to Porto, or I went to California, whatever it is. I'll have those memories, and they'll serve me. Hopefully, serve me well.
Stories are the only currency I deal in. So actually, having stories to talk about, I feel, is very, very crucial.
Oh, there you go, mate. And number 1, make football an even bigger part of your life. It's good for the soul, mate. Like, I was thinking about, like, Taylor was saying the other day what makes her happy, and she loves being near the ocean or by the sea or going for a walk by the river. Like, that is how she gets into a good state of mind. She's in a happy place when she's doing that. And like,
she's by water.
Whether she is like, whether she's worrying about something that's, as I say, pointless, or she's stressing about money, which, whatever, she goes for a walk and she likes to sit and overlook something. And I'm like, recently, like I went for a walk, like obviously working from home, you've got to sometimes get out of the house. So just try and get out for, even if it's 20 minutes, just walk around. And I walked down towards Walton and Hersham. There was just a kids' game on. I don't even know what age group it was. And I just instead of just carrying on my walk, I was like, actually, I'm just going to do laps of this pitch and like stay in this environment, because for me, like, this feels good. And I got home and I was like, that was so good for me. Like, just being around football makes me happier. And it doesn't matter if it's a football stadium or just a football pitch, or if I'm out, maybe, or if I'm just out there like playing football with Dylan and Reese, like it's very normal right these days to just sit there. I know we all love football, but it's becoming too normal to just sit there and watch it on TV, and like that is your football. That's your football menu right there. Whatever you can see, it's like on your screen. That's all the football that you're consuming time and time again. But think how much better it is when you actually get out and see football with your eyes or feel football with your feet, like having a kickabout or actually seeing a match and seeing the enjoyment and feeling part of it. It feels so good. Like for me, football is the best form of escapism there is. And if I was to worry about something, if I was to stress about something, I genuinely think that the only way I could truly escape from that feeling would be through football. Like, and that's why for me, for you, for everyone that I assume that listens to this podcast, it is just such an important thing in our lives. Football will always be there for us. It'll take your mind away from anything. I'm not going to go quite as far as saying it's more important than life or death, as has been said before, but not far off, mate. And just enjoy the football, people.
DJ, I only have one problem with this. And that problem is that what if you're up all night worrying about football?
Well, you shouldn't worry about football because there's absolutely nothing you can change about that. Unless you're a player. If you're a player, if you're like Nicholas Jackson and you're worrying about football, then that's completely understandable. But if you're Jack Collins laying there
lying in bed worrying about who Fulham against,
worrying why Betis are slipping down the table and why Fulham aren't signing a striker yet, then that is completely pointless and you should definitely find something else to think about.
Thank you. I appreciate his words of wisdom. And with that, I think it's probably time for us to call this a day. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you ever so much to the birthday boy, Mr. Dean Jones. It's been an absolute pleasure, DJ. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, for your ranking, for your things you love. And you know what? For being the heartbeat and soul of this podcast. It really, really makes me happy that I get to sit with you 3 times a week and chat about football.
Oh, that's very kind, mate. That's great. Me too. And thanks for uploading it every week, because otherwise nobody would know who I am and it would never have got out there.
That's a separate issue. Logistics man Jack delivers on the back end. Dean Jones delivering on the front end. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you have a lovely pizza. We start with pizzas. We should end with pizzas. I hope your pizza is delightful today and better than my one at the weekend. I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening as ever, and we will see you later on in the week, gang. Take it easy. Peace.